Well, pull up a chair and set a spell here at Tales from SYL Ranch Live, the vlogcast that reminds you to always know where your towel is. And I'm your host, Bill Stone. Hey, Captain Jesse, glad to see you tonight. How are you doing? Well, tonight on Tales from SYL Ranch, we have the Fandi Masters retro review of 1984's Supergirl. Oh, man, oh, man. Well, to explain my show, for the benefit of viewers who might not come in right at the top of the hour like Captain Jesse did, and let people maybe get a chance to look at me in the archives, I do live reviews. Sometimes I do serious films and TV. Sometimes I do schlock, like tonight. And sometimes I do films or TV with modern appeal, such as I'm doing with the Orville on Friday nights. Usually, I stick to a period from about 1900 to 1980, and that's because the period after 1980 is pretty well documented, but the period from 1900 to 1980 has a lot of science fiction and a lot of science fiction fandom that isn't very well documented. So part of the reason I do my show is to document it. I will take any and all questions, comments, and nasty remarks. You can tell me if I miss something, if I'm completely full of crap, or if I just happen to be an amazingly hoopy frood. I go into a lot more depth than most reviewers. I don't just say whether I liked a film or not. I go into the acting, the direction, the cinematography, and some of the mechanics of making a film. And I can do this because a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I was once an actor, and so I can speak with a modicum of authority. Not as much authority as a modern working actor, and I never want to give that impression, but with some authority. As they often say, those who can, do, and those who can't, teach. Supergirl is 34 years old. Movie, yes, it's outside my usual time frame in 1984, but I'm going to explain why I did that in a second here. In fact, I generally suggest that you can neither watch nor review a film this old from a 2018 perspective. And it is certainly an older film, and a lot has changed in 34 years, as Captain Jesse said. However, what we see hasn't changed that much. There's a little dated technology, but it's not badly dated. What's mystifying to modern viewers was probably mystifying to viewers of the time. So I'm not going to go into context as I might do on other films. If something comes up, it will be addressed during the review. Yes, Supergirl was linked to Superman. I'm going to get into that when I get into some of the scripting. But yes, this was intended to be part of the same universe as Superman's 1 through 4, amazingly enough. But various things, including completely bombing at the box office, sort of led them to just imagine that this film, fans too, much like Superman 3 and Superman 4, we like to just pretend they never happened. And this review is going to be a little bit different than most of mine. This will not be one of my in-depth reviews where I call out all of the IMDb's because the film is so stupid and such amazing schlock that, to be honest, when I started doing it all, I kept asking myself, why are you killing yourself over this? The big names are the ones with the Oscars. The smaller names can't do any better with the crap than the Oscar winners. What's the fracking point? It is a terrible film. And so I'm just going to talk about the stupid with the one bright spot, which is Helen Slater, who really gives her all. Unfortunately, she has little to nothing to work with. Let's see, is Lois Lane Supergirl? No, not at all. I'll walk through the plot in a second, as I often do, but no, Lois Lane is and has always been, well, for the most part in comics. There was a period when she wasn't. But traditionally, and in this film, Supergirl is Superman's cousin. The same way as it is in TV, except they did it right. Now this, as a non-spoiler review, this is one of my schlock films. I'm doing it because I had made an absolutely gushing review that was 3 hours long of Superman from 1978. And I wanted to show you that, yes, I am capable of giving a Superman family character a really bad review. Now, if you haven't seen this, if you've not seen this, I would watch it once, and only once, because it will leave you confused and slack-jawed and wondering, as always with schlock like this, who the hell greenlights this stuff? And as bad as it is, Helen Slater, who plays Supergirl, is giving it everything she's got. If there is a bright spot in all of this crap, it is Helen Slater's performance. Is Wonder Woman related to Supergirl and Superman? No, not at all. Wonder Woman is a superpowered Amazon from a island that in the comics was called Paradise Island through the Bronze Age of superheroes. In the modern age, they decided that didn't sound good enough, so they changed it to a Greek name, Themyscira. And Superman, of course, is Superman, a strange visitor from another planet. And that's what Supergirl was supposed to be. But this film, it sure ain't. This is just trash. So having said that, I guess I will issue myself a...
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. All hands, prepare for incoming spoilers.
Yes, it is a spoiler alert. And that is because I am a Fandi master, and that means that the fandom is strong with me. And that means that nothing is new, nothing is original, and at worst, I figured it out about a half an hour early. Not this film. It was too mystifying. And unfortunately, this is not a boast or a brag. This is where you find yourself after having watched, read, and listened to about 100 years worth of science fiction. You just can't see all the new stuff for the whole century that came before. And you realize there's very damn little that's new in the world. But that is not the case here. It did not interfere with my ability to enjoy this because you don't enjoy it because this film is crap. It is worth watching once just to look at and stare and go, what the hell were anybody thinking about this stupid film? Okay, so the story, such as it is. Kara Zor-El lives in an isolated Kryptonian community named Argo City in inner space, whatever the hell that is. A man named Zoltar allows Kara to see a unique and immensely powerful item known as the Omega Hedron, which he has stolen and which powers the city. However, after a mishap, the Omega Hedron is blown out into space. And after overhearing the wariness of her parents, Kara follows it to Earth in an effort to recover it and to save the city, undergoing a transformation into Supergirl during the flight. For some reason. On Earth, the Omega Hedron is recovered by Selina, a power-hungry would-be witch, and assisted by Bianca, her messed middle-aged friend. And Selina tries to free herself from a relationship with a warlock, Nigel. While not knowing exactly what it is, Selina makes all kinds of assumptions that the Omega Hedron is powerful and can enable her to perform magical spells, and fortunately, she turns out to be right. Supergirl arrives on Earth in costume, for some reason, and discovers her new powers. And following the path of the Omega Hedron, she takes the name Linda Lee, identifies herself as the cousin of Clark Kent, and enrolls at an all-girls school, for some reason, where she befriends Lucy Lane, the younger sister of Lois Lane, who happens to be studying there. Supergirl also becomes enamored with Ethan, who works as a groundskeeper at the school. Ethan also catches the eye of Selina, who halts her plan for world domination and drugs him with a love potion, which will make him fall in love with the first person he sees for one day. However, Ethan regains consciousness in Selina's absence and wanders out into the street. An angry Selina uses her newfound powers to animate a construction vehicle, which she sends to get Ethan back, causing chaos in the streets as it does so. Supergirl rescues Ethan, and he falls in love with her instead, while she is in the guise of Linda Lee. Supergirl and Selina repeatedly begin to battle in several ways, and Supergirl appears to have the upper hand, until Selina uses her powers to lure, then trap Supergirl, sending her to the Phantom Zone. And here, Supergirl discovers that she's lost all of her powers. She begins to wander the bleak landscape, but misses her footing, falls into a swamp, and passes out. However, Zoltar, who has exiled himself to the Phantom Zone as punishment for losing the Omega Hedron, finds Kara, and after she regains consciousness, Zoltar sacrifices his life to allow Supergirl to escape. Now, back on Earth, Selina misuses the Omega Hedron to make herself Princess of Earth and takes Ethan as her lover and consort. Emerging from the Phantom Zone through a mirror, for some reason, Supergirl regains her powers and confronts Selina, who uses the Omega Hedron's powers to summon a gigantic shadow demon. The demon overwhelms Supergirl and is on the verge of defeating her when she hears Zoltar's voice, for some reason, urging her to fight on. Supergirl breaks free and is told by Nigel that the only way to defeat Selina is to turn the shadow demon against her. So Supergirl quickly complies and begins flying circles around Selina, trapping her in a tornado in one of the worst special effects sequences ever put to film. Selina is attacked and incapacitated by the monster as the whirlwind pulls Bianca in as well. And the three of them are sucked back into the mirror portal, which promptly reforms, trapping them all forever. Free from Selina's spell, Ethan admits his love for Supergirl and that he knows she and Linda rather, and he knows that she and Supergirl are one and the same for some reason, but knows that it is impossible because he will probably never see her again, and understands that she must save Argo City. And the final scene shows Kara returning the Omega Hedron to a darkened Argo City, which promptly lights up again. And scene. Oh boy. You know, that sounds a lot better than it actually is. Okay, cringe moments. I always like to get my cringe moments out of the way. Everything. To be honest, most of this review is going to be cringe moments. It's just everything. There's so many of it, and there's so many weird moments. The weirdest moment in this film is a scene in Lucy and Linda's dorm room, because they share the same dorm room in this girls' school that Linda has decided to enroll in for some reason. Now, Linda's wearing her school jacket. It's got a uniform. It's much like the parochial school that I went to. It's got a jacket uniform. The difference here being, of course, that it's an all-girls school. Excuse me, I have been nursing a sinus infection for like 2 weeks now, and it's still problematic. Anyway, it's a all-girls school, and they have uniforms for everything, including their school uniforms. It's a jacket and a blouse and a skirt and everything. It's kind of like you see sometimes in these. And so Supergirl / Linda, as Linda, is wearing this outfit, right? And Lucy is over there talking about, it's some weekend, it's a 3-day weekend, they're going to get out, and she's going to do some stuff with her boyfriend and all that, and she wants to take Linda with her. And Linda starts putting on one of Lucy's bras over the school jacket and then stuffing it with socks. And Lucy asks her what she's doing, but frankly, not weirdly enough. If somebody was doing that, and you go, what the hell are you doing? This whole film is filled with weird, strange moments like that. And that is the one that tops it. As a viewer, you're just going, what? What's going on here? It doesn't make the slightest bit of sense. Captain Jesse asks, what do I think of Navy ships or space captain personally taking the helm of their ships personally? There are moments where it's appropriate. I think sometimes if you're going to have to do something that is nasty, like, shoot a planet that has some problem, or if you're going to fire on a friendly ship, one of your own ships, having to destroy it, I think that's a moment where maybe a captain should come out and, sit down at the helm and fire the weapons. Most of the time not, though. Anyway, back to this weird schlocky movie. As I say, it's filled with bizarre moments, but that one takes the cake. That one is so weird. The viewers just like, not that they weren't confused as hell already, but they're just going, what? Why did she do that? And why is it over her jacket? And it's just so weird. And then there is the product placement. You'll notice over my shoulder, I have in the background today a Popeye's chicken. And that's because a huge percentage of this film, when Supergirl is around or when they're in town, takes place in the Popeye's chicken in the town. And oftentimes Supergirl is doing stuff like flying up and landing on top of the Popeye's chicken. If you look at my thumbnail for this episode, it's got Supergirl standing in front of Popeye's chicken. That was an actual publicity still they took of Supergirl standing there in front of a Popeye's chicken. Now, I did do a little tinkering with that so that it put a Popeye's like meal box in her hand and a drumstick in the other. But let me just guess. Let me just guess. Popeye's chicken probably damn near paid for this film. And the product placement here is much, much, much worse than the International House of Pancakes was in Man of Steel. I mean, Popeyes is everywhere. There's also a lot of A&W in there, too. Product placement, man. Just product placement. Blatant, flat-out product placement. And it's everywhere. As I say, it's why I have this Popeye's chicken in the background. It's so bizarre. It is so bizarre. Now, the opening titles, another weird, strange, cringe moment. They are clearly attempting to ape the Superman titles, except that they look cheap and terrible. There's no comparison between them. It is awful. It's just awful. The dialogue was written by someone with absolutely no grasp of 1980s teenager slang. Let's see, this was 1984. I would have been a soft freshman in college at that point, using this type of slang. It didn't make any sense. Listen, if you're watching this for the first time today, trust me, this weird dialogue didn't make any sense then. It doesn't make any sense now. There's one line that really strikes me. There's this bad girl at school who's constantly doing near psychopathic things. And she says, when Linda shows up, she says, another barfy new student. Trust me, in 1984, we never said that. It was just cringeworthy in 1984. It is cringeworthy today. This writer, who I'm going to talk about in a bit, had absolutely no grasp of 1984 slang. Now, as Captain Jesse mentioned, was the Supergirl dialogue more like the 70s? No, it wasn't. No, it was definitely not more like the 1970s. The dialogue in here is, as I say, anytime there's something going on with the teenagers, it's just totally written by someone I don't know where. I mean, I think they just said, I think kids today say this stuff. No, they didn't. They never said this stuff. As Captain Jesse mentioned here, this is supposed to be in the same universe as the 4 Superman movies. In fact, it would have taken place after Superman 3. And in various drafts of the script, Christopher Reeve was supposed to show up in a cameo. But he took one look at the script and said, no, I don't think so. So they put Superman. Where is Superman when this happens? Because obviously this is the sort of thing that would attract Superman's attention, right? Well, it turns out he's on a peace mission in another galaxy. Isn't that just convenient? Does the dialogue feel like a young Alex Kurtzman? No, God, no. Those guys, I mean, I hate their movies and stuff, but they can write dialogue. No, the dialogue here is just anytime the teenagers are talking amongst themselves or to other people, it's awful. You know, there's a point at which Ethan, as the plot says, he's like half out of it, wandering down the middle of the street, and Lucy just yells out to him how he's a space cadet. No, No, we didn't say that in the 80s. Just terrible, terrible dialogue. So, Superman is conveniently out of the galaxy. This film had a number of great actors. It had at least 2 Oscar winners who came in with this film, and they are completely wasted. Peter O'Toole, my God, you know, Lawrence of Arabia, Oscar winner Peter O'Toole gives the worst performance of his life. I have never seen him do anything worse than this. There's a point at which the Omega Hadron that gets lost pretty much as a result of his having stolen the thing, or as he says, borrowed it without permission. And it pretty much gets lost. So I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to clear my throat. Anyway, the Omega Hadron is lost largely due to his actions, and he says that he's going to go to Earth to find it. And when Kara's parents say, "How are you going to do that?" he goes, "Through that, in there." You know, it's just terrible. He's terrible all the way through. And in the Phantom Zone, he's got like this drink of something, right? It's kind of like a spray bottle, and he keeps squirting into his mouth. It's apparently some kind of alcoholic or something like that. And he goes, "Do you want to squirt? Do you want to squirt?" It's just like, this is Peter O'Toole? This is Lawrence of Arabia? This is the worst performance I've ever seen him give. Now, maybe he just decided, maybe he looked at this script and he said, "Oh my God, this script is complete crap. I'm going to phone it in and be insane." Maybe that's all he did. I don't know. But it's a terrible, terrible, terrible performance on his part. And then there's Faye Dunaway, also an Oscar winner when this thing came out. But the character and the script are fantastically stupid. So she has absolutely nothing to work with. I think of the 2 Oscar winners that I know about in this piece of crap, she does probably the best job of any of the Oscar winners. But it still doesn't make any sense. It's still complete crap. It's awful. It's not as bad as Peter O'Toole. Her performance isn't bad like his is bad, but it's also bad. Then there's Brenda Vaccaro. You know, I've already reviewed the film Capricorn 1. I know that she is capable of doing good work. She's won some awards. I don't think any Oscars, but she's capable of doing some work. Here, this character she's playing is almost, but not quite, as stupid as Otis in Superman. Only the problem is Brenda Vaccaro really isn't as good at it. Maybe it's just the crappy, crappy, crappy material. I don't know. She is, however, at one point, the voice of reason, telling Selina that maybe she should lay off the shirtless guy that she wants until she conquers the planet, and then she could have any shirtless guy she happens to want. It's like Selina has this plan. She has this plan for world domination with this new Omega Hadron and how she's going to do everything with it, and she totally puts it all aside the moment she sees a guy. What? Just dumb. Then Maureen Teefey, whom I first saw, and I will go through these actors in a minute. I'm just going through the crap. Maureen Teefey, whom I first saw in the movie Fame in the early 1980s, I guess it would have been. And I thought she's a pretty good actor. And she does as good a performance as anyone. But again, she's totally hampered by this really, really stupid dialogue. I mean, it's practically in every single scene. She is the script is so badly written. She is, you know, she tries to make it real, but the problem is anybody watching this film at the time would have known that this was stupid, and nobody talked like that. And anybody watching it now, man, you know, I got to tell you, this is the part that context comes in, right? Modern viewers, I want it on record. If you ever watch this piece of crap movie, we did not talk like that back then. That was not the slang we used. This this writer had no conception of teenage slang at the time. Captain Jesse asks, was the Supergirl dialogue... oh, you already asked. Sorry, I didn't catch that. So anyway, I want that on record. I lived through this period. This film was bad and stupid, and that dialogue was cringeworthy at the time. Nobody talked like that. Another piece of cringe. Why does Kara just show up with the Supergirl costume, right? She gets into this sphere, which, by the way, she looks younger when she's in the sphere that's going, through there. When she gets into that, she looks younger, and then she goes through there. And when she gets under a lake, I guess it's under a lake, she looks a little older, more makeup, and she's wearing the Supergirl suit for no reason. We have no idea why she's wearing this Supergirl suit. It's just like on her. Why? For that matter, why does that through there go underwater in our world and then open up like underwater and Supergirl comes flying out? Why does that happen? By the way, a bit of trivia about that stupid thing. If you frame advance it, you can actually see it. They wanted for some reason to have Kara come out of that thing dry, right? Fly up out of a lake dry. But they didn't do what would have been the obvious thing, which would be lower her down and then run it backwards. No, they made a cardboard cutout of Helen Slater in the Supergirl costume and pulled that out of the water. As I say, it's not obvious when you watch it, but if you frame advance through it, you can see it instantly. It is a cardboard cutout. They didn't even do the thing that they've been doing since the 1950s, which is if you want to have somebody come out without anything on them, you film them going down in the water and then coming up. Just reverse the film. Cam just says the Breakfast Club had the best 1980s teen talk. Yes, I think the Breakfast Club, yeah, if you want a good example of 1980s teen dialogue and teen slang, yeah, that's a good one to use. Not this one. Anybody watching this one now in the future, ever since 1980s, no, nobody talked like this. Never. Never. Other pieces of cringe. Why does Kara act like a complete brainless child in Argo City? Other than, and I have read now several different scripts, it was a holdover from previous script drafts. And I'll talk about that in a bit. But she looks and acts like somebody who's stupid or a small child, despite the fact that she was at that time. She still is. She's my age. She's almost exactly my age. I think she was born like a year before I was. And she's, almost exactly my age. And why does she look and act like a small child? It makes no sense in the context of this film. And it's only there because it's a holdover from previous drafts of the script that I will talk about in a bit. You also have to ask yourself, why? Why does Argo City not look like Krypton from the Superman films? It is supposed to be in the same universe. And also, on Argo, why are there no walls or doors anywhere? I mean, what are all the residents of Argo a bunch of super intelligent hippies? They certainly look like it. There's one where they're like dancing, and they've all got some of them had their heads on their shoulders, and they're doing around to this stupid music. And Kara just walks through it all. I mean, just walks from place to place to place, walking through it because there are no doors and no walls in this weird production design, which I'll talk about. And then we get to the question that's never, ever answered. What in the hell is inner space? Argo City is never explained, right? In the comics, Argo City was a fragment of Krypton that miraculously survived Krypton's explosion. Here we have no idea what this is. All Zaltar says is they are in inner space and Earth is in outer space. And you have to go through gravitational registers to get from inner space through to outer space through something called the binary chute. What? What the hell does that mean? Inner space? I mean, it's like the writer or something thought that, this was some sort of scientific hippie stuff. I don't know. But it's terrible. It is terrible. Another question you have to ask yourself. Why does the Phantom Zone look like a real place, like a planet or something? Because in the Superman films, it was explicitly described as an eternal void. And that's what it looks like. I mean, when the three criminals go into the Phantom Zone, it looks like it's just blackness. And it looks like they're just spinning around near what would be the entrance or exit to the Phantom Zone. They're just spinning around in it through an entire movie and into the beginning of the second. Why is it a planet here? Why is it a planet here? That doesn't make any sense. Yep, Larry says cousins, Superman and Supergirl. Yeah. They always have been. And, they've done it right on television. It's just here, it's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. As I mentioned, now the thing about it was in the comics, the criminals were sent to the Phantom Zones, and essentially they were made immaterial, like ghosts. It's totally different from the films. They were made immaterial, like ghosts. They were invisible to humans, and they were unable to touch or interact with anything in our universe, but they could watch everything if they wanted. They just couldn't interact or touch it. So they haven't even got that. I have to say that I've seen drafts of the script now where some of that is included, but it's still not consistent with what we saw as the Phantom Zone in the Superman movies. The Superman movies, this thing came down, got them, and then they're stuck behind this glass wall. And there's nothing there. Here, the Phantom Zone thing picks her up and apparently drops her off on some planet where Zaltar is, fortunately enough for Supergirl, and apparently there are some other criminals over on the other side of that mountain that we never hear about. But it doesn't make any sense from any perspective. More cringe moment. Again, what is that squirt? What is that? It is so totally weird. It's like, I guess it's something like alcoholic or something, the way that Kara spits it out. But it's so weird. It's almost, even at the time, I was uncomfortable with it because it's Zaltar is this older guy asking Kara, this girl about my age and always has been, if she wants a squirt. It just seemed to verge on something that's kind of sexual, and at the same time it's weird because there's no real explanation about what's going on. That's the case with a lot of the stuff in this film. Weird things happen without any explanation whatsoever. I also have to ask, as a fan of Superman and knowing the Superman lore, as Larry says, they were cousins, Superman and Supergirl. Why did they frack with Supergirl's backstory? Now, in the comics of that time, Argo City, as I mentioned, was a domed city on a fragment of Kryptonian debris, which amazingly survived the explosion of Krypton. That's something you just kind of have to hand-wave him over because it doesn't make any sense. But Kara's parents were forced to send her to Earth when the ground surface began to turn to kryptonite after it exploded, which is what happened to every fragment of Krypton that we know about. It turned to kryptonite. And it threatened to kill them all, and so they put her in a rocket and sent her off many years after Superman had left. And then her spacecraft crashed on Earth, where it was found by Superman. And she was wearing the Superman costume, but that's because her parents wanted her, put it on her before they sent her off, so that she would be wearing it and Superman would be able to instantly identify her. That's why she's wearing the costume when she crashes in the comics, traditionally, back in the Silver Age. Here, it's just like she shows up wearing the costume for no good reason. She doesn't leave wearing the costume. She leaves wearing a hippie robe or a hippie dress or something, and shows up with the costume. Why? Can we have a little explanation? No, we can't. It's Supergirl. Of course we can't have any explanation. There is no explanation to anything that goes on in this film. It's just terrible cringe moments the entire way through. I'm just doing cringe moments right now. Anyway, her spacecraft crashed on Earth. And here's where they pulled out the part where she goes and joins a girls' school, despite the fact that she only has days to find the Omega Hedron before Argo is going to run out of air and everybody's going to die. Because it's so weird. Why? Why would you join a girls' school? Why? But what's happening is they looked at the comics, and the deal was, in the comics, Superman put Supergirl in an orphanage. Now, that was the Silver Age. I think it was maybe the late 1950s, but certainly in sometime maybe the 1960s. And the reason that happened, rather than him just like sort of adopting her, as you'd think a normal person would, it was actually assumed at that time that an unattached male would not be capable of raising children. And of course, there was the fact that DC Comics was not going to fundamentally alter the format of Superman by inserting Supergirl into his life on a daily basis. But why did they frack with that backstory? I mean, if you're going to have stuff happening in this movie the way they do, why does Supergirl spend the time to join a boarding school? Why? It makes no damn sense. And then there's Selina, the antagonist of this film. Being a witch is stupid. And it was in every draft of the script that I have read. I've read several now. Although in at least one and a couple of drafts, she's actually taken over by some kind of shadow demon. And at the end, the shadow demon is taken away and she's back to being good again. But Supergirl takes her to Argo City because the human authorities would not understand that she was taken over by this thing and did all these terrible things. Why would you make her a witch? See, Superman, I've said this before with Superman. Superman and Supergirl are science fictional characters, and they work best when they're pitted against science fictional foes. Now, whatever the Omega Hedron is, besides from being, as Hitchcock said, a MacGuffin, we got to get it, it is a technological device. If you were going to make this damn thing right, you would have Selina being some kind of evil scientist who uses the Omega Hedron to power science fictional devices, kind of like what they did in Captain America, the first Avengers trailer. And, the Tesseract, right? The Tesseract was there so that they could power their Hydra weapons. That would have made more sense. But no, the Omega Hedron arrives, which, by the way, just plops down in some dip that they have when they're on. See, it's hard to describe this because I've read multiple versions of this script. And a couple of them, it makes semi-sense. But what they retained from the ones that make semi-sense turn into make no sense at all in the film as it's shot. So they're on this picnic, she and Nigel, this guy that she's with, who's a warlock and supposedly knows everything. He starts telling her about how you can become invisible by taking 3 beans, taking the head of a dead man, putting a bean in each eye, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, what the hell? And then the Omega Hedron just plops down in the middle of some dip or something that they've got. Selina pulls it out and stares at it and goes, Immortality be unto this one, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, what? Where is she getting this from? You know? It would have been better if she was a scientist and this, because the Omega Hedron is a scientific device. It's not some kind of magic that powers their city. It would have been better to be something that ran science fictional devices. But no, it just runs witchcraft. Who the hell knows? More cringiness. Why does Selena know exactly what to do with the Omega Hedron despite not having ever seen it before? Why? Why does she know it can do this stuff? There's no explanation. From the moment she picks it up and starts going, immortality be unto this one. The viewer is like, how do you know this? How do you know what this thing can do? And then she just immediately takes it, walks over to in Nigel's car, and uses it to start it and drive away. How does she know it can do that? It just landed in some dip and she picked it up. How does she know what this thing can do? It doesn't make any damn sense. Why? See, this is all these cringe moments start with the word why, because they're all questions that I thought at the time, that every viewer thought at the time, that if you watch it today, you think it. Why does Selena halt her plan for world domination, which she apparently is able to do, to obsess over some lawn maintenance guy who happens to look good shirtless? Wouldn't it make more sense to take over the world and then have her pick of any shirtless dude that she wants? Why? Why does she do this? Why? And of course, Supergirl enrolling in a girls' school. Again, in the comics, Supergirl was in an orphanage and was eventually adopted by a couple, the Danvers. Now, in an earlier draft of this script, she does spend a couple of evenings with Mr. and Mrs. Danvers in their home, with maybe a little hint that that might happen someday. Here, they've just retained Mr. Danvers as the school headmaster, and he doesn't do anything important. He just is an idiot the whole way through. So, this is their attempt to at least keep some of that from the comics, but in the context of this stupid plot, it's just stupid. It completely halts Kara's search for this Omega Hedron, which again, she's only got a few days. It's been said right at the outset, right at the beginning, before she goes in that, through there, in the terrible performance of Peter O'Toole. It's been told, her mother says, whines really. Oh God, she just whines. I'll talk about her, but she just whines. We've only got a couple of days and the air will go through as we breathe. So we've established it's not that long, a few days. Why does she just halt this search? Because she sees a bunch of girls playing hockey in a field and decides that she wants to be in this girls' school. Why? What? Why? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, you only have a few days. Why would you go? Doesn't make the slightest bit of sense. Okay, another one. This one's not a why, at least. This is a how. How does Supergirl change her clothes by walking behind some trees and changing each item of clothing with the specific tree she walks behind? So the first tree she walks behind, her Supergirl tops disappeared and she's wearing a blouse. Next tree she walks behind and she's wearing the blazer over the top of it. The next tree she walks behind, she's wearing the skirt and the knee-high socks. Why? Why does that happen? Why? And also there's a shot when she flies out the window and they put it where you can see the wall, you know, dead center. So she flies here and she's Linda Danvers, and then Linda Lee, and then she flies out the other side. And as she's flying through, her suit changes. Why? Why? Why does this happen? It just doesn't make any sense. There is an invisible monster in this film. I'm reviewing the director's edition, by the way. I've got there's a director's edition for this, and I don't recall whether this was in the released version or not. But in the director's edition, there is an invisible monster, and And as I say, I think it was cut from the theatrical, and probably for good reason. Because you have to wonder, Invisible Monster, right? I think they just ran out of money for the special effects. I think there was supposed to be, from the way the dialogue goes and all that, I think there's supposed to be some kind of big shadow demon monster. But it's just invisible now. And I think that in the theatrical version, they cut it for the movie. Why they put it back here is totally mystifying. Also, the invisible monster causes quite an amount of very bad property damage. Crushes cars, rips things out of the ground, crashes its way through this, that, and the other thing on its way from where Selina lives, and am I going to get into that, to the dorm where Supergirl is sitting as Linda Lee. And okay, what's happened by this point in the film, when this stupid monster comes along, Linda has been kissed by Ethan, who has been under the control of his love potion, and he thinks he's in love with her. And so Linda starts kissing herself in a mirror. Again, it's one of the many, many moments that you look at and you go, what? And so she's about to do that, and she's in the dorm, and this creature comes crashing its way through. It crashed out the walls of Selina's domicile. I'll get to that in a moment. Selina's domicile crashes its way through everything in sight until it gets to her dorm, and it smashes at least one car completely into pieces. And interestingly enough, in earlier drafts of the script, that was Lucy's car. And nobody seems to care or notice. Oh, look, there's a completely squashed car over there. Isn't that interesting? No. Totally overlooked. Nobody ever notices. Nobody notices the massive amount of property damage this thing did, nor the fact that there's a straight path from it to Selina's domicile. Now, I have read several drafts of this script. Now, in most of this draft of the script, Kara starts out as 5 years old, and the city is powered by, I think, 4 or 5 Omega Hedrons. So when this one is lost, the city is good for another 12 years and wasn't in danger of death for only a few days. But then the script jumps forward to when she's 17 years old. But the initial age of that character, the way that she plays it, and the fact that they've got her in a costume that to some extent minimizes her figure, and she acts so stupid in the beginning. It's like somebody said, okay, let's just take out that part about the 5 years old so we don't have to cast another actor. But it makes no damn sense. She just looks like she's mentally retarded or something. It's so weird. And you have to give it to her. The standout, the only bright spot in this whole film is Helen Slater, who is giving this her all and does her best to act like something of a child in Argo City. I mean, they even put her in this thing. They put her in a class with 5-year-olds. It's a complete holdover from other drafts of the script, and it's just so stupid. Now, a few pages. I've only read a few pages, and I would be really interested to see this draft of the script. Because in this one, as was originally intended, Superman, played by Chris Reeve, would have had a cameo. But if you read those pages, even those pages suck. There's only 3 pages that I could find that exist of this script. And reading it, I just go, oh, yeah. If I was Chris Reeve, I would have looked and said, no, I think I'm too busy to make this film. If he was going to be honest, he'd say to the Salkind, this script sucks. I'm not going to be in this piece of junk. Go away. It's interesting. There is no draft. I have not been able to find a single draft of this script that's actually any good. Some of them, like when Kara's 5 at the beginning, make at least marginally more sense than what they put to the screen, but there is no version of this that's any good. It's always terrible. Reading the script, in fact, the shooting script and several drafts, there is a very weird moment of description, and probably is indicative of the writer's mindset on this. He actually puts into the script, when the girls are playing hockey on the field, when Carr first sees them, he writes in the script, and I quote, "Girls in their adorable school gym outfits run around playing field hockey." He's talking about minors here, and that's a very specific description, right? You wouldn't necessarily put adorable in there. Most screenwriters would just put girls in school gym outfits, not like adorable school. I mean, it comes off so weird. It's really kind of creepy. It's like the screenwriter just wanted to see teenage girls running around in shorts. And when you read it, it's like, ew. Why would you put that? What? Adorable? That's so weird. It is so weird. And in point of fact, the entire film, all drafts of the script that I read, and I feel like it was written by someone who has little to no understanding of women. It's like he said, okay, women like dancing, so Supergirl does a ballet in the air, which initially not struck me as horrible in terms of the way they did it. It was like they were trying to recreate Lois and Clark and Superman's flying sequence in the first one. Difference is apparently they couldn't get the wires to look good out in the sunlight like they did. Didn't put her on wires and everything like they did in Superman, so they have to shoot it through foliage so that the wires don't show. But again, it was like the writer said, oh, women like dancing, so Supergirl has to do a ballet in the air. The writer also said, oh, women like to socialize, hence this stupid girls' school that they go to. And he went, oh, women like romance. Hence, we have Selina interrupting her plan for world domination for some random shirtless dude because all women want a man. And also, hence, Supergirl kissing a mirror. He just thought, oh, okay, this is what girls do when they want to, practice kissing, I guess? It is such a weird moment. It is not as weird. The weirdest moment, as I said at the top, the weirdest moment in this is when Supergirl puts the bra on over her school jacket and then starts stuffing it with socks. That's the weirdest moment. But kissing the mirror is pretty bizarre. I think the writer went, oh, women like furry animals. And so we have Supergirl waking up to a cute little bunny and flying past a bunch of horses. And then the writer went, oh, women can be catty. And so hence we have a girl at the school who is a constant bitch, who even tries to scald everyone at one point. And not to mention there is, of course, Selina herself. The whole thing between Selina and Nathan and Supergirl is like the writer said, oh, women like to fight over men. As I say, the whole thing just comes off as somebody who was writing about women who knew nothing about women. And the only voice of reason in all of this, the only sole voice of reason is Bianca, who, as I said, is Selina's best middle-aged friend, who is just barely smarter than Otis in Superman, but unfortunately isn't nearly as good at being stupid. There's a line that always sticks out of my head. It has since I first saw it. Her powers are ramping up. They cut over to Bianca, and she goes, this girl's increasing by leaps and bounds, I gotta tell you. It's so weird, and the dialogue is so bad. As I said, the dialogue here, written by someone who has no conception. I'm not even sure he had a conception of modern American slang, much less teenage slang. It was terrible. And there are all kinds of cultural subtext about a girl's school that are going to be completely lost on non-British audiences. And that's because it was written by a Brit. And most of the attitudes and behaviors of Americans come off as cartoony and totally unrealistic, as they often do when that happens. My best advice always to British writers: before you write about Americans, visit the United States. And not just the big cities like New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago. Come here to flyover country. Go any place outside of those big cities. You'll get a better idea of what we're really like as people, as opposed to somewhat ridiculous stereotypes, which we kind of see here. Now, the special effects, they vary quite a lot. The flying parts are pretty good. It's consistent. It's consistent with what we saw in the Superman movies. It's relatively, consistent. But everything else, almost all of the rest of the special effects are terrible. Particularly, particularly at the end. They have the big monster who's attacking Supergirl, right? This big demon thing. And it's pulling on her and stretching her and twisting her. But the only reason it's doing that is because, a bad special effect. And the monster doesn't even have its hands around her or holding on to her in any way. It's got its hands like this or something. And Supergirl's in between them, and its hands aren't even moving. And she's getting all twisted up with some bad special effect. Huh? Huh? There's also Supergirl making the tornado at the end. Okay. Selina's like, I don't know, 5'5", 5'6", something like that. And Supergirl's a similar height. And in making a tornado around someone like that, right? You've seen it done a million times with like The Flash on TV. You start running in a circle, and maybe because she's flying, as she goes up, the circle gets larger and larger, which happens. But the circle starts out at Selina's feet at about the size of a chihuahua. And so Supergirl suddenly flies and starts flying around her and turns into the size of a chihuahua? What? It's terrible. It's just terrible. The best thing that you can really say about this film is it makes Superman 3 look good. Makes Superman 4 look good, for that matter. And as always, was something that I now took an entire hour just to go through the cringe moments. You have to ask yourself, who green lights this crap? I could have come up with a better script, and I was 18 or 19 years old at the time. I could still have come up with a better script than this piece of junk. That's the cringe moments. And those are just the ones that are obvious and stick out to you. The whole movie's a cringe moment. Popeye's fried chicken. As I say, I'm a little proud of it. Go look back at the thumbnail for this video at some point. It has Supergirl. It was an actual production still, an actual PR still that they took, where Supergirl is standing looking very serious in front of the Popeye's chicken with the Popeye's logo and a marquee that says, "Love that chicken." Here. I'm just going to throw it up once. I don't have a mic on this. I'm just going to put it up for about 5 seconds. Okay. You may notice I did a couple of things with that. I inserted her holding a Popeye's chicken thing in one hand and a drumstick in the other. But that's such incredibly stupid product placement. My God. All right. Some great moments. Well, I liked it when it was over. I did also like that they placed it in Illinois, relatively near Chicago. There's actually a map. You can freeze it and see it. I didn't bother putting it up. But there's a map. It's not a real place, but it's relatively near Chicago because she flies through that. And they did that because at that time, Supergirl, who was an adult at that time in the comics, was operating out of Chicago. And the only reason I really like it very much is because I lived in Chicagoland for 10 years, familiar with the area, so, I thought that was okay. Now, cars flying sequence, right? Ballet flying sequence. I have to tell you, though it was a very poor attempt to copy the Lois/Superman sequence in Superman, and it was shot through foliage, so that the wires didn't show. I thought the concept was pretty nice. I thought that was an interesting thing. If it was me, right, and I just showed up someplace and I had the ability to fly, I might not do a ballet like that, but boy, am I going to start having fun. You're going to see me flying all over the place. Again, it's written by a writer who thinks that, oh, all women love ballet. Let's have Supergirl do a flying ballet. And no conception of women at all. And I also like the fact, this is one that I actually like that I think is good. Kara flies differently from Christopher Reeve. Now, I had a kid who was into ballet from the time she was like 4 or 5 all the way through high school. And so when Kara's flying and she's got her arms out there and the way she does it, it actually reminds me of you'd have to ask my kid, but one of the common ballet positions for your arms when you're doing ballet. It's kind of out there. I thought that was a nice touch. Even if you're somebody who's writing a script about women that you don't understand in the slightest, I did like that. I thought that was a neat touch because she could still sell the flying doing that. And then when she would get faster, then she wanted to get someplace fast, then she'd do the Chris Reeve thing, one in like this and the arm out and changing stuff. But when she's flying with her arms out like that, I thought she sold it. I thought that worked really well. It was different than the way Reeve did it, but it still worked, and I thought that good. And again, the special effects for the flying itself are fine. They're good. They're consistent with Superman 1 and 2. The rest of the effects, as I said, are terrible. Okay, going to call out the people. I am not going to walk through their IMDb's. I'm going to call out some of the stuff that they did in their past just to show you that some of these people were good actors or could have been good with better material. Or in the case of Peter O'Toole, I think he read the script and said, screw it, I'm going to be a nutcase and phone it in. But I'm not going to call out IMDb's because, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I was doing that and I was like, this is stupid. This is a terrible movie. This is, if it was a 1950s B movie, yes, call it out because nobody's going to know who these people are. Today, in 2018, this is relatively close enough that we know who some of these actors still are. You can think about, you can go see Lawrence of Arabia and go, oh, look, Peter O'Toole. And then come see him here and go, my God, Peter O'Toole. You can see Faye Dunaway in any number of movies and go, oh, that's Faye Dunaway, cool. And you can come and see her here and, wow, Faye Dunaway. It's, so I'm not going to sit and call out their IMDb's because I just didn't think it was worth it for this film. It was too much of a chore. I do want to mention the writer, David Odell. Could not find a picture for him. Well, I've just gone through most of the terrible. It sucked. His writing sucks. It sucks. It sucks. It sucks. As I've often said, you can have some of the best people in front of and behind the cameras, and they did have some good ones. Peter O'Toole and Faye Dunaway, they came to this with Oscars. But if you haven't got good material, this is a perfect example of what I talked about. If you don't have good material, you ain't got crap. David Odell, you wrote a crappy script. And this one is all on you, I'm afraid, buddy. Now, as Supergirl, Helen Slater, the beautiful, I'm sure if you're younger, you look at her and see all the lines. But you know what? At age 53, I still think she's hot. She was born in 1963, making her only 2 years older than me. And really, all I have to ask is, Helen, if you happen to watch this review, I must ask you, are you, happily married? Because if not, I would be happy to put you on my list as the next Mrs. Stone. So just, call me. If you're not happily married, because it says in IMDb or not, in Wikipedia you are, but if, you're having problems and maybe you're considering dumping your husband, give me a yell. You know, I'll take you to a great Nebraska steakhouse or something, where you get a you know, wonderful steak that you've never tasted before or something like that. Call me. Her performance here, she is the best of everyone. She's sort of a wide-eyed innocent, which makes sense given that she's coming from this Kryptonian society that looks nothing like Krypton we've seen in the other movies. And she did the best that she could. And she was and is a very attractive woman. Her performance and herself are probably the reason that I have some warm feelings for this film. I watched this sucker in the last week and a half, I don't know, at least 3 times. It was painful every single time. But when she was on the screen, things brightened up a little bit. She can't save this crappy material, but it brightened up a little bit. So Helen Slater, I give you, you know, props for being about the only person in this film that really makes the performance is any damned good. I've heard her talk, and she says, you know, she was young and she didn't know enough to be completely frightened by the 2 Oscar winners that she was working with, and probably would be if she was doing it today. But either way, you know, she's doing this wide-eyed, innocent person, and I think that works. She has no material to work with, so it's squandered. But the reason I think I probably have any level of warm feelings about this film is just because of her and her performance. And then we have Faye Dunaway as Selena. As I've said before, wait till I get back in focus. As I've said before, I usually try to find, you know, with these older films, I try to find a more contemporary picture of the actor or the actress that makes them look good. There is no picture of Faye Dunaway in present day that looks good. Okay, Hollywood actresses, I just have to tell you this. I have to tell you this. Quit with the plastic surgery. When you get, see, I intentionally took this one, and it's a full body, and you can't see your face very well. When you see Faye Dunaway's face today, it is quite obvious she has had a lot of work done. She's got the cheekbones, the big fish lips, the wide eyes. She, you know, you're gonna age. I get it. You're gonna age. You're not going to look as good as you did when you were 25 years old. I don't look as good as I did when I was 25 years old. But I'm not getting fish lips, and I'm not getting the cheekbones, and I'm not getting the wide eyes. You look at pictures of me when I was, you know, 18 years old, you can see it. My eyes were wider at the time, but I've gotten older and things have sagged. Guys, it does not help you look better to get the fish lips. It does not help. Stop it. Just stop it. Age gracefully. Will it cost you some roles? Yes, but who the hell is going to want to hire fish lips over here? Stop. Just stop. It looks terrible. Quit. Now, when Faye Dunaway came to this, she was an Oscar winner and also had another ton of awards, and yet she is terrible for this. She got a Razzie, by the way, for the movie Mommy Dearest, which was another terrible performance in a terrible film, and she was nominated for a Razzie for Supergirl. I guess she's doing the best she can with this terrible, terrible script. It does not come off like Peter O'Toole. I think she's trying to make the most she can of it. But there's nothing here. There's just nothing here. It's all stupid and weird moments, and you're like, what the hell is going on the whole time? And she's trying to make sense of the script right from the outset. I don't have anything spherical here to work with. You know, she gets the omegahedron, and it's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting. I'm not quite sure how they did that. I keep wondering whether that spinning omegahedron that they had wasn't on, you know, a fake hand that they put out, because it does look like it sometimes. Or maybe it was on a motor that was behind the hand, and you know, the wires went up between the fingers, so you had the omegahedron spinning like this. Right from the outset, she's, you know, she's stuck with lines where she's holding this thing going, immortality be unto this one. And you're like, what? Where the hell does that come from? Who said anything about immortality? It's a power source. What, who, what, where, when, how, why, what? I am suddenly reminded. I wish I wish I would have thought of it at the time or earlier. I would have gotten a clip out of it. There's an old Looney Tunes cartoon where a mouse wants to be eaten by a cat. Cat wants to be beaten up by the bulldog. And this is old, so they're using an adding machine. So the dog is like, mouse wants to be eaten by cat. Shh. Cat wants to be beaten by bulldog. Shh. Pulls out the paper and goes, it just don't add up. That's this whole film. It just don't add up. So maybe she's doing the best she can with a terrible script, but it comes off awful. And then there's Peter O'Toole as Zoltar, another Oscar winner when he came to this, and was famous for Lawrence of Arabia. Would go on later to do, I think it was later, to do one of my favorite films, which is My Favorite Year. Great performance, I thought, in that one. But here, God, he is just fantastically over the top a lot, and just plain terrible. You know, you can't get over. I cannot get over the lines. How are you going to get to Earth? Through that, through there. You know, just let us chew the scenery for a while there, Peter. I don't know what went to him. Maybe, you know, he signed for this thing. He says, oh, a Supergirl movie. That ought to be good. The Superman movies are pretty good, except for that Superman 3 one. But this one's, you know, hey, okay. And then he got the script and he went, oh, my God, what utter tripe. I am not going to try at all. I'm just going to go nuts on the set and see if they keep it in. With any luck, they'll take out my entire performance. I don't know what was going through his head, but he's terrible here. He's over the top and weird and terrible the whole time. When he's in the Phantom Zone planet and he's got that bottle and, would you like a squirt? A squirt? And again, it has this weird sexual overtone when he talks about squirting. And it's just, oh, man, terrible. Oh, man. Then we have Hart Bochner as Ethan, the love interest in this love triangle. Because Selina has to stop her plan for world domination to go after him because he looks hot, shirtless, and Supergirl has to, well, Supergirl halts her plan. She has to go around saving the guy. She halts her plan to try to find the Omega Hedron so she can go to a girls' school. Okay, the script has Ethan as a complete doofus the entire time. But because of that, because he's a total doofus, Hart Bochner is not a bad actor. If you don't know him from anything else, he played one of the guys who was in Die Hard, the first Die Hard movie. He's the guy who was basically turned coat, and then they killed him. He's not a bad actor. He's an okay actor. And because of the fact that he was written as a complete doofus, and because Hart Bochner is a pretty good actor, his performance is okay. He comes off as pretty stupid. If everybody else had been written in this film to be mentally retarded, the film might have come off well. Because I think most of the actors are, you know, if everybody on this film was Rain Man, I think the actors in this film are good enough that they could have pulled off playing Rain Man, all of them. And he's playing Rain Man. So he's okay. You know, his position in the script as being somebody that Selina just is so hot for that she has to quit her plan to dominate the world so she can get him, you know. Red Letter Media said it, and I hate repeating them, but it's absolutely right. The correct sequence of events here, Selina, is take over the world and then get the hot guy, you know. If you're so horny that you have to get the hot guy before taking over the world, maybe you're not the right person to take over the world. You know, just saying. Then there's Brenda Vaccaro as Bianca, Selina's best middle-aged friend. Her performance here, now, as I said, I've reviewed Capricorn 1. She's won awards. Don't think she's won an Oscar, but she's won a bunch of awards. And the Capricorn 1, to me, proved that she can do good work. Until Capricorn 1, I was really only familiar with her work after she was a bit older and sort of started playing mom-type roles. And she can do good work. But here, she's terrible. Maybe it's just the script is so awful that nobody can make it work. That the best you can do is be Supergirl, who's coming from a planet totally different from this one. It's just wide-eyed and wow, look at all this stuff around me, and that'll work. But the rest of the plot is so freaking terrible that nobody can make it work. Maybe that's just what it is. I don't know. Then there's Peter Cook as Nigel. Now, Peter Cook had been well known at this time. He was a pretty well-known face. He's playing the warlock Nigel. And again, it's terrible. It's terrible. He comes off probably as one of the better ones. But what do you do with a script that, like, your second line, Selena says, I want to take over the world. And he says, well, there's only one way to do that. It's if you're invisible. Really? That's the only way? And he says, so take three beans and put two of them in the eyes of a dead man's head. And you're like, what? Okay. To his credit, that stupid line does come off as straight. It's like I say of a lot of actors and actresses. You can, to me, one of the great marks of a great actor or actress is you can take stupid dialogue and make it somehow work. Sir Patrick Stewart, he could take stupid dialogue from Star Trek The Next Generation's first and second seasons and sort of make it work. And he does that here. He takes the stupid dialogue he's given and makes it work because he's totally straight about it. Well, take three beans, put one in each of the eyes of a dead man's head, and then he gets cut off there. But he tries. He's trying. I think they're all trying. This material's terrible, with the exception of Peter O'Toole, who I think just looked at the script and said, frack this. I have just been cast in something terrible. I am not going to give it any work at all. I'm just going to be crazy and hope that they cut most of my scenes. But again, Nigel's too integral, and he works as well as anyone can in this crappy movie. There's Mark McClure as Jimmy Olsen. As I mentioned in my Superman review from 1978, the 3-hour one, which I certainly suggest you go out and watch if you haven't. As I mentioned in there, Mark McClure as Jimmy Olsen does not have a lot to do in Superman 1 or 2. Has a little bit more to do in Superman 3, but not a lot. This is the only time in any of the Superman movies that Jimmy Olsen actually has some stuff to do. When Lucy and he are hanging in those giant bird cages or whatever the hell they are, I guess we'll call them spherical stripper cages. When Selena has them hanging in the spherical stripper cages, and Lucy and Jimmy are sitting there thinking that this is the end, that they're going to be dead soon, and Jimmy says, I got to tell you something that I should have told you earlier. I'm in love with you, and they both profess their love with each other. That is one of the few scenes that works, and his performance, his portrayal of that, for me, actually worked well. It's the sort of thing that, I myself, at that age, could have seen myself doing if there was some girl right next to me whom I thought I was in love with. I would, right at the end, I would have to tell her. And that part worked for me. I thought that worked. And he does that is one of the few moments in this film that actually works. The rest of it is complete crap. He gives a reasonably good performance throughout. You know, the one thing about it that you have to criticize, and again, is the damn script. This kid, is supposed to be about 16 or so, maybe a little older, but he is a reporter. He's a photographer for a great metropolitan newspaper. You would think that a photographer for a great metropolitan newspaper. So, for example, he goes, this school for the weekend to see his girlfriend, and all of a sudden, there's this dude wandering down the middle of the road who's like totally out of it. Well, if I'm a photographer for a great metropolitan newspaper, I'm getting on my cam. Look, you crazy guy. And then we've got this, this backhoe coming in. Never occurs to him to do it once. When they have the giant mountain that appears, never occurs to him to do it. Never occurs to him to do it. I have to say, in earlier drafts of the script that I read, he does do some of that. Why they cut it, I do not know. That would have been one of the things that I would have kept. You got this guy who's from a great metropolitan newspaper. He's going to take pictures, Okay. Lucy Lane, who is Lois Lane's cousin. That, by the way, is taken straight out of the comics. Lucy Lane in the comics is, in fact, Lois Lane's. That's at least up through the Bronze Age. I don't know what became of it after Crisis on Infinite Earths destroyed everything in 1985. But up until that point, yeah, she was, in fact, Lois Lane's younger sister, and she was, in fact, the girlfriend of Jimmy Olsen. It was their attempt in comics to kind of mirror what was going on with, Lois and Superman with, the sort of other guys, the Second Banana crew. So that was okay. Although Lucy Lane never went to a girls' school, she lived in Metropolis, not with Lois, but lived in Metropolis. I thought Maureen Teefy, and again, I had known her from Fame, and Fame was a really, you can't underestimate just how fantastically important Fame was to actors and actresses of my age of that time. We really loved that film. We really loved that film. To us, that was saying everything that we would ever have wanted to say about our own hopes and dreams. And so I remember her from that, giving a really good performance there in a really well-written film. She is probably as good as anybody can be in this film. The problem is she's constantly given this dialogue that is totally wrong. Mentioned earlier, the writer on this script completely blows all of the slang that goes on. It's totally wrong. Viewers now, viewers in the future, if you ever happen to watch me, no, this film is not indicative of what people used to say back then. It's totally wrong. Oh, it's awful. I think Maureen Teefy did pretty good, aside from this terrible stuff. I mean, she's the one who does the sensible, sane thing at one point. This freaking backhoe or something is headed down the street, and it's got no driver. And she goes, oh, my God, it's a runaway. And it's going slowly. It's not just screaming down the street. This is a typical slow-speed chase, such that if Ethan hadn't been completely out of his mind, he could have just run away from. He could have run faster than that thing. They had to have him stoned out of his mind and tripping around and stuff, even for that thing to get close to him. Otherwise, just run away. So Lucy does the smart thing. She goes, oh my God, it's a runaway, and jumps up into the cab. And then for reasons that I've forgotten, falls unconscious. It's interesting the way she falls unconscious, right? She falls unconscious such a way that somehow her hands keep a hold of the door frame when she's got her head on it. Oh, they couldn't even afford to shoot it in such a way that she was keeled over the front of it or anything like that. Probably because outside of the frame when they were shooting that, if they got the shot here, and probably down here is some guy actually running the controls. So you couldn't do what a normal person does when they're knocked unconscious, is flop over on the controls. It was dumb. But she does the only about sane thing in there. Hell, it takes Supergirl longer to figure out what to do about that thing than it did her. Something like that happens, you think that, oh, this is a job for Supergirl, all right. And she does eventually. She runs product placement. She runs into the Popeyes to change into her costume, comes out and lands on top of the Popeyes. Product placement, Oh, man, but it's awful. Anyway, Maureen TV. She does as good a job as anybody could with this. Again, terrible movie. Does a smart thing at one point. The bit at the end with her where she is, she and Jimmy have their moment. Only part of the script that I thought actually worked was that 30 seconds. That script. All right, then we have the category of everybody else. Well, really the only two people worth talking about in everybody else are Mia Farrow, who apparently also got put in this film because she said, oh, good, a Supergirl movie. Hey, that'll be great. It's like the Superman ones. Oh, my God, look at the crap. Mia Farrow is in there as Allura, who is Supergirl's mother. She tries, but it's terrible. Fortunately, she's not there for very long. Then Simon Ward as Zor-El, Kara's father, who, again, not there long at all and a little over the top in my opinion. Producer on this one, much like the other on the Superman movies, is Ilya Salkind. He is listed as the executive producer. Ultimately, this mess is all his fault. You want to know a little bit more about him, go back to Superman, where I'd spend 3 hours on that film, and you can watch me talk about his IMDb and all the stuff he's done. He's a big producer, done lots of stuff, and still is. But this mess, ultimately, is his fault. He greenlit this piece of crap. The other producer on this is Timothy Burrill. He is probably not as responsible as Salkind for this, but either he thought it was okay, or he never piped up and said that every single draft of this script sucked. As I say, I think I've read about 4 drafts now, and they all suck. Janos Svark was the director here. This guy did some decent work. He directed Somewhere in Time in 1980, a good movie. He'd done a fair amount of TV, although year after this, he did do Santa Claus, the movie. His direction is barely serviceable. The best you can say about his direction is he got the product placement. He got the product placement. Our cinematographer on this is Alan Hume. Well, you knew what you were supposed to look at, the Popeyes. You knew what you were supposed to see, the Popeyes. There was nothing wrong with that. The direction and the cinematography is boring and flat, and it never does anything that's even remotely kind of creative. It's just point the camera and make sure we see the Popeyes chicken. See, by the way, I'm curious if you want to throw somebody wants to throw something in chat. I'm just curious if I'm actually seeing it. I haven't seen anything roll by in chat, so I'm curious if I'm actually getting it. If somebody's out there watching and wants to throw some words in, just say, yeah, you can see. We see the chat. I'd be curious. Music on this one. Oh my God. Okay. One of the few semi-bright parts of this film. The music is by Maestro Jerry Goldsmith. Now, as I've said in the past, I refer to some composers in the modern era as Maestro. Okay, Hey, Supercrew63, how are you doing? Listen, buddy, you might want to go back in time and watch my 5-hour charity live stream that I did to raise money for campfire survivors of Paradise, California, with your brother in mind. In any case, I call these people maestros because at some point in their career, they have done work that is so far beyond just underscoring the action that it turns into individual music pieces that you can listen to. This was 1984, so it was after he had done Star Trek, which was an amazing score. One of the few really good things about that film. If there is anything good about this film, it is the score. But even Maestro Jerry Goldsmith cannot save this. You know, except for the main titles, which unfortunately have this weird twanging sound going through it. Okay. Well, appreciate it, Supergirl. I'm not a problem, man. Happy to do what little I can. So, the main titles are, the main titles themselves are forgettable. The music is okay. It's like sounding. It does do a decent job of sounding a little bit female. Now, the only thing that I have a problem with is in the released, the film version of this, I've got a soundtrack that includes the released soundtrack version of the opening titles and the film version, and it's different because in the film version there's this constant ear going on, and it's terrible. In the released soundtrack version, not so much, but generally the score is kind of forgettable. Partly it's the script. It's this terrible, terrible script because it doesn't lend itself to making these standalone pieces. It is certainly not Maestro Goldsmith's best work at all. Just go look at Star Trek the Motion Picture from 1979, 5 years previously. Tell the difference instantly. This is not one of his best work. It's probably better than the rest of the film, but it's not his best work. Production design is by Richard McDonald. Okay. Why do Selena and Bianca live in an abandoned amusement park, particularly the Spook House? I mean, that's kind of where you might expect to find a Batman, Superman, supervillain from the 1960s. Maybe the Joker would hang out in an abandoned, amusement park over in the Fun Ride. This I can see. Why does she live in an abandoned amusement park at all? Why? Why does that happen? Why? It's just dumb. It's just dumb. And by the way, in most of the drafts that I've seen, most of the draft scripts I've seen, that doesn't happen. She lives in a house. That makes a hell of a lot more sense, living in a house. It's just some house. But no, here she's living in an abandoned. I guess they just said, okay, she's a supervillain. We need to have her in a supervillain place, not a house or anything like that. And I have to ask, why, Richard? Why? Why did you choose to eject that incredible Kryptonian architecture? Why? Why did you choose to eject that? That was brilliant and beautiful. And this city is supposed to be some kind of Kryptonian relic that's in inner space, whatever the hell that is. Why did you eject that? That stuff was brilliant. What you did was terrible. It was just terrible. It was this weird hippie-like structure where people are going through, there's no walls, there's no doors. It's just ridiculous. Supercrew63 says, I was kind of disappointed with the movie. It was a little like, a lot hokey. The TV show Supergirl is much better. Oh, God, yes. Yeah. This is a terrible movie. I mean, I did an hour. On cringe moments. And I'm not going through these guys' IMDb's because I don't think it's worth my time. This is a rotten movie. This is schlock. If it was something that happened in the 1950s, I might do that. This one, it's a little close enough to our time that, people of our time might know some of these names, might have seen them elsewhere. I'm not going to go through it. But again, I have to ask, the production designer, Richard McDonald, why did you do that? Why did you do that? Even Bryan Singer knew to retain the crystalline architecture for Superman Returns, which is a very flawed film. But even he knew that that could not be outdone. Keep it. And why you changed it here is a total mystery. And I don't know why you did that. It doesn't make any sense. Special effects supervisor is John Evans. There's actually an army of people like we often see today in special effects. He gets called out just because he's the supervisor. The flying effects, as I said, when it's just the flying, that's okay. It's on par with Superman 1 and 2. I think by 3 movies, because Superman 3 had been out by then, they had learned how to do that flying pretty well. That works. The rest of the special effects are horrible. The best you can say is they had an invisible monster, so there was no effect necessary. It's stupid to have an invisible monster. Stupid as hell. But at least you didn't burden it with a terrible special effect like you did at the end with that demon thing that's supposed to be like pulling on Supergirl, but Supergirl is just a crappy special effect done with bad opticals of her twisting around, and the demon isn't even touching her really. Just terrible. Just terrible. Only the flying is any good. It's terrible. Actually, I did find a picture of the costumer. Costumer is Emma Porteous. The costumes, like the script, are filled with a lot of stereotypes that Americans never actually wore at that time. Much like the crappy teenage slang that no one ever spoke at that time, there are clothes here that nobody wore at that time. It is British people doing a British script in Britain, because that's where they shot. It was Great Britain. That whole town set is backlot on Pinewood Studios. They only shot there. So the scene where Superman lands and is confronted by 2 rapists, one of which is Max Headroom. When she's confronted by the 2 rapists, that actually occurs on the street, the same street as the rest of the stuff is, the small town. The difference is they just shot it really, really dark. It's supposed to be in Chicago. And trust me, okay, if she landed out in some of the western or southwestern burbs, yeah, there's places that might look like that. But they were just covering the fact that it was the exact same location. But her costumes have a lot of things that are a bit stereotypical. British people doing a script that is written by a British person who does not understand Americans. And costumers and everybody who don't really understand Americans or what teenagers were wearing at that time. It's all rather stereotypical. It is, however, worth noting one thing. The producers and everybody else apparently thought that Helen Slater's breasts weren't big enough for Supergirl. So when she's in costume as Supergirl, they have given her a padded bra. I think she did a movie a year later called The Legend of Billie Jean or something like that, where she's practically naked. I think he could have probably, I don't know, maybe spandex didn't look that good, but she isn't small-breasted. I know there's nudes of her out there someplace. But yes, they put a padded bra on her when she was playing Supergirl. Chief makeup artist here is Ann Brody. She gets called out simply because she is the chief makeup artist. There was, in fact, an army of people who did the makeup. I thought the makeup was fine. It was serviceable. It was what people were supposed to be, and nothing wrong with it. There weren't really any aliens or anything like that, and so it was generally just practical makeup. Now, some of the reception at this. Man, I did not know how bad this movie bombed until I went to do my research for it. This film had a budget of $35 million in 1984. If you translated that into 2018 dollars, that would be about $85 million. Now again, it was $35 million budget. It got $14.3 million at the box office. Oh, it didn't even make back half of what the movie cost. And again, if you put that into modern dollars, that would be 34 million. So imagine actually almost 35. So imagine you had an $85 million movie and at best you made back 35. It was a real bomb at the box office, and for damn good reason. It was terrible. It was awful. The critics today put it at 10% on Rotten Tomatoes. I guess that's about right. I don't know. It's not Ed Wood bad. Though I have to actually wonder who are the 10% that actually like this film. Critics of the time hated it. Modern critics hated it. Viewers on Rotten Tomatoes, sorry, I'm off my thing. Viewers at Rotten Tomatoes have 26%. That is far too high. That is far too high. I suspect the only reason that it's there is because they're probably my guys my age who like Helen Slater. But 26% for this film, there's a quarter, there's 1 out of 4 people who think this movie is good? Why? It's a terrible film on every level. Which brings us to the end. If we can ask ourselves, is it any good? No. This is one of my schlock movies. As I say at the top, sometimes I do serious films and TV, sometimes I do schlock. This is schlock. Now, if you haven't seen it, I would watch it, but once, and only once. And that's simply because, and it's one of those movies, again, it's probably best to watch it with friends or, people who are, superhero buffs or fans of bad movies. Because you'll probably laugh a lot more. If you're just watching it by yourself, you're going to go, why? You're going to be befuddled and confused and possibly slack-jawed. If you watch it with friends, you can at least all go, wait a minute, why did she do that? And start laughing about it. Watch it with some friends. As bad as it is, and it is terrible, Helen Slater, who's playing Supergirl, is giving everything she's got. And she is playing a wide-eyed innocent. And that pretty much works. If there is a bright spot in this entire film, it is Helen Slater's performance. Not the crappy script she was given, not all the stuff that happens, but her performance alone. Thought she was good. Rest of the film, totally terrible. What she has to do in the film, totally terrible. But she's given it her all, and she's trying, and, if there's a bright spot to it, it's her. Otherwise, terrible film. Watch this with friends so that you can laugh at it. Larry says, still love Helen. Yes, me too. As I said when I was doing her, if you happen to be watching Helen, I'd be very curious to know if you are happily married. Because if you're not happily married, call me. Give me a yell. I will put you on right at the top of the list for the future Mrs. Stone. I will let you take over the spot that was Shania Twain until Shania Twain married the guy, the husband, ex-husband of the woman who was having an affair with her husband, with Shania Twain's husband. When that all went down, it was like, okay, forget it. Take her off the list. Don't sell crazy here. I'm all stocked up. But again, Helen, if you're not that happy in your marriage, give me a call. Give me a call. Let me get down to my appropriate show card. So, yeah, it's crap. It's schlock. It's awful. It's terrible. Watch it once. Watch it with friends if you can, because you will you will at least laugh together. It's awful otherwise. Taking a big old swig of my Hy-Vee raspberry naturally flavored sparkling water beverage. Hy-Vee, call me and I would be happy to have you as one of my sponsors. I'm constantly drinking your stuff anyway. But I'm sorry about that. Went to the wrong one. I'm not watching that closely. So I would like to do some ad copy, as always, in the style of the immortal Ernie Anderson, but not very good. My voice is weird tonight, so we will see. This Friday, on a very special episode of Tales from SYL Ranch, Ed finds himself behind enemy lines when he crash lands on a mysterious planet. Now, Kelly questions why Gordon wants to take the command test. Plus, the crew of the USS Discovery must join forces with Captain Pike. Now they must unravel the mystery of mysterious signals that have appeared across the universe. That's this Friday on the Fandi Masters mini-review of The Orville Season 2, Episode 4, and the season premiere of Star Trek Discovery. Then, next Monday, on Tales from SYL Ranch, Captain Carter arrives on the USS Farragut and must investigate the disappearance of a Starfleet officer and a secret Klingon weapon. Now, Carter must resolve this crisis while learning what it means to be the captain of a starship. That's next Monday on the Fandi Masters review of Starship Farragut, Episode 1, The Captaincy. Super Cruise says, I watched it because I knew you were reviewing it. To quote Dr. Smith, the pain, oh, the pain. Yeah. I watched this film probably at least 3 times in the last week. You want pain. Trying to walk through and analyze individual things. Oh, God, pain. But I appreciate that you watched it. Like I say, watch it with friends. It's a terrible, terrible film. As always, of course, Tales from SYL Ranch is live here on Fridays and Mondays, or Mondays and Fridays, however you want to put it, in North America at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Pacific, and if you're working off of UTC, that's 2 a.m. the following morning. In terms of upcoming reviews, there is a schedule on my website, www.wrstone.com. Every Friday, I'm doing a mini review of The Orville until the season is over. And then on, I don't have my rest of my upcoming schedule written out. Well, I'm certainly going to do some stuff after Starship Farragut. You can find the full schedule on www.wrstone.com. There is a show schedule link in the sidebar. I would note that if you click any given individual thing, you may very well find a place where you can watch it on the internet for free. Though I must say, as someone who was in IT for 40 years, always use effective ad blockers no matter where you go on the internet. I personally suggest you block Origin. So wonderful because it will block everything, including the embedded ads in YouTube, which, by the way, are getting to be really intrusive on my handheld device. There's no such thing for that because Android won't let you block ads that way. There is some, you can use the Brave browser. I use Brave on my Android device. That'll block some stuff, but it won't stop the embedded YouTube ones. You block Origin, lowercase UBLOCK. You will find it in your browser's add-on repository, and it will get rid of all ads everywhere on the internet, speed up your loading time for all web pages everywhere, and you won't have to sit through the embedded ads here on YouTube. And, I can tell this because, YouTube, I'm not monetized. I never will be. And, I just don't care. Larry says, I would go through any pain for Helen Slater. Yeah, me too. Especially when I was that age. There's no question. I have some physical attraction for Helen Slater. If you're not happily married, Helen, call me. Give me a call. I will make you very happy. Hitachi Magic Wand. I will make you very happy, Helen. Anyway, there's some of that going on. And again, I think her performance, after looking at it and trying to analyze what is it that makes me feel any level of, good feeling about it, is that her performance, she's taking this material and approaching it as a complete wide-eyed innocent who knows absolutely nothing. There are stupid scenes like putting on a bra. and like that. But you know, aside from that, and she, even that looks like a wide-eyed innocent thing. You know, she knows that somebody's wearing bras and doesn't really understand. So yeah, Larry, I'd go through pain for Helen, absolutely. Supergirl 63 says they should have done it as a comedy, might have been better. Yeah. After it is just terrible. It's just terrible. So I guess at this point I might ask something like this.
Say, pardon me, but could you help out a fellow American who's down on his luck? Hit the road!
So if you like what I'm doing, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and tell all of your friends, family, neighbors, pets, and livestock to do the same. If you want to contribute to me, there is a PayPal tip jar listed below. I have no other crowdfunding sites because I won't go to Patreon anymore, and Subscribestar is utterly useless to me. You can also visit my website, which you can see down there. There's a coming attractions link down there, but also if you visit that website, you will see a contributions or contribute to the show sidebar link, and you can go and see my Amazon wish list. I will tell you that depending on how things go with a 401k that I must have a payout for if I want to get disability, that laptop I have may be a-comin'. We will see. In any case, anything that you donate to me goes towards that laptop at this particular moment in the space-time continuum. If that happens to be something I get, then it will go towards that Tilly hat and other things to be used here in my studio, such as maybe an amber and a blue filter on each of these to make me look a little bit more human. I know I look okay, but trust me, amber and blue lighting will make me look even better. And if you want to just buy that thing outright for me, feel free to buy the laptop. Feel free to buy the Tilly hat, because this thing is going to wear out eventually. It's doing well now, but it's going to wear out eventually, and I would like the Tilly hat so that I can attract my libertarian viewers who like hemp, because that's what it's made out of. Plus, it's dark enough and roughly this same kind of shape and size, so it'll still look good. Larry says, Kara was literally a fish out of water. Yeah, and as that, it literally fish out of water. Yeah, I don't know if you caught the beginning, but I mentioned that the way that they did that, her flying up out of the lake, was not Helen Slater flying up out of the lake. That was a cardboard picture of Helen Slater, because they were so dumb that they didn't think to do the thing that they did in the 1950s with all those swimming movies, where if they want somebody to come out with the hair dry, they lower them down into the water and then reverse the film and bring them back up, and they're dry when they come out. They didn't think to do that. So they took a cardboard cutout of a picture of Helen Slater going like this and flew that up out of the water. If you frame in advance, you can actually see it is a cardboard cutout. In any case, let's see. Melissa Benoit looks very hot as Supergirl, and she does not have a large bust. Yeah, they didn't do to her what they did with sorry, I got some things. I had my thing set wrong. Yeah, they didn't do to her what they did with Helen Slater, which was pad out her bra. Yeah. I've said before, I like the current Supergirl series. I like it a lot. I think I got Superman right there for once. DC and films, just forget it. Turn it over to the ones who are doing it on television. They know what the hell they're doing. So, you know, I like that Superman. I like that Supergirl. The only thing about that show is it is not written for my age. I get it. It's written for younger people who have some of that romantic drama going on in their lives. For me, that's long over. I don't have that. But so I get that it's not written for me. But in terms of the action and stuff that goes on like that and plots, yeah, like it very much. Like it very much. Like all the stuff they're doing on there. A lot of people are starting to scream SJW stuff. I have not seen enough of the most recent ones to know. I know that they had a trans superhero in Supergirl. Okay, just be careful, guys. Be careful. Because the reality is, the number of people who want to see that This will be my little commentary for the day. DC got it right with Aquaman. Yeah, I did see Aquaman. I saw a screener of Aquaman. Yeah, they got Aquaman right. I thought that was good. But in terms of the guys running the show, I have not seen enough of it to know. But I can tell you this. On DC guys running Supergirl, be very, very careful, because the number of people who actually want to see that is very, very small. It is you and a tiny, tiny subset who are very loud in American politics right now. But it is an extraordinarily small number of people. The reality is, if you go woke, you go broke. It's a saying we're hearing now. Get woke, go broke. You will. Be very careful about that, because if you do that, you're targeting an extraordinary minority of very vocal people who do not matter. If you get woke, you go broke. So don't do it. Be very careful about that. And I can't talk about it specifically. I haven't seen what they've done. I just heard that they had a trans superhero in Supergirl. And I'm like, careful, guys. Careful. There really is no audience for that. Get woke, go broke. In any case, if you want to support me, you want to support the ways that you can do things, you can see it all at my website, which is www.wrstone.com. It's scrolling past in the lower third. It's got links to it in the description box. I must always thank my viewers who have contributed to me. One of them I am using here as part of my studio, and I must tell you, it is my birthday today, and I am getting birthday notifications from everyone. I've been getting text messages from my freaking eye doctor. I've been getting text messages from my pharmacy. Everybody who knows my birth date has an automated text message or email. I am constantly getting, I got about 7 of them from headhunters off of LinkedIn. It's just crazy. It's been insane all day. Like, I need to be reminded that I'm 54 years old again. All that means is that, I guess it was about 54 Thanksgivings ago, when Arlo Guthrie and his friend went up and decided to go up and visit Alice at the restaurant. Of course, Alice didn't used to live in the restaurant. She used to live in the church nearby the restaurant, in the bell tower with her husband Ray and Foch the dog. Well, you know how it goes. Oh, thank you very much, Super Crew 63 and Larry there. I was going to make a big deal. I've been getting these all damn day long. They actually started at about 2 a.m. last night. So, anyway, if you want to support me, please, you can see all the ways to do that and all kinds of other neat things on my website, www.wrstone.com. Have to thank people who have been supporting me and continue to support me financially. It's all going to go towards the laptop, unless it turns out that I can get that thing more immediately, which may happen at this point. That is, assuming Oracle can find my 401k. Been working with them on that for 2 days. But in any case, it will accrue to other, if that happens, it will accrue to other cheaper things on my Amazon wish list. And I always have to thank you because, I get a kick out of the fact that, anybody thinks that I am going to be have any good opinions. That's great. And the fact that I feel to some extent like I'm doing a certain level of performance, which I am. You can't do this without the lights and the green screen and all that. And it takes me back to the days when I was an actor, so I get a kick out of that. Mistress of Mars. I don't remember. There was a Mistress of the World that I was going to do, but I could not find I couldn't find a copy of it to do. So I pulled it out. That made a hole for a fan film. And I've decided to do at least 1 fan film per month. So that's why next week we get Starship Farragut. So anyway, all that said, I guess that is all the time that we have today, boys and girls. So tune in again on Friday when I review The Orville, Season 2, Episode 4, I believe it is. Mistress of the World, yeah. When I do The Orville on Friday. So until then, and also this week I will have the 3rd in my pre-recorded episodes on becoming a Fandi master. Expect to see more Zen. The first one was sort of a lecture. Second one was very Zen about how to breathe. And the third one is going to be Zen about, well, other things. We're not going to get to the really concrete stuff until we get the basics out of the way. Got to unlearn what you can have learned. You got to learn to breathe, and then we got another one. And after that, we'll start to get into some more concrete things. But I will have that coming out towards the middle of the week. And yes, I miss Alara as well. I did the review of that the other night, and sad to see that character go. I like her very much. Be curious to see what happens going forward. I always hold out some hope now that she'll come back, but who knows? Who knows? I don't know. But that is all the time that we have today, boys and girls. So tune in again on Friday. God, I did that twice. Until then, this is Tales from SYL Ranch, the incompetent who keeps hitting the wrong buttons. And I'm your host. Remember, always know where your towel is. And I'm your host, Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.